Hello and welcome to class number 9 of this Decoding PSIR series where we decode PSIR through answer writing. In this session, we will be taking up a previous year question that UPSC has asked from the theory part, see how the topic is, see the details of that topic, try and understand that, and then we'll try and form an answer to that. We have had 8 classes so far. This series has a lecture on every Monday, Wednesday and Fridays at 4 p.m. We usually take up those topics, those questions that have been repeated time and time again. It's extremely beneficial for all those who have taken PSIR as an optional subject or are planning to take PSIR as an optional subject. Now, this particular series, as I said, is aimed at making sure that you have clear concepts with respect to PSIR. It's one of those topics or one of those subjects rather where theory based questions keep on getting repeated. Let's see what is today's question. This was a question asked in 2022. The question is, examine the entitlement theory of justice. It's a 15-mark question, 200 word is the word limit. If you look at the syllabus of PSIR, paper 1 part A, one of the most important topics is justice. Now, the problem here that many people have is, when you read Indian polity, we read about justice and we read a very basic understanding of justice and we think that, oh, this is what we had to read in PSIR also. But that is very, very far from the truth. Actually, in PSIR, justice is a very, very wide topic where you read about the different theories of justice, people who have given their thoughts about justice like John Rawls, etc. Over here, the entitlement theory of justice is also very important. The interesting part is, if you don't know who gave this theory or what this theory is, you can't even attempt this question. And that is why it becomes tricky. So we'll first try and understand who is the person behind this, what is this theory all about, what does it say, and then we'll see how to convert this into an answer. Now, this theory is given by a famous American philosopher, Robert Nozick. Robert Nozick, American philosopher, not very old. In fact, he passed away just in 2002. So it's not a very old theory that he would have given. He wrote certain books. In one of the books that he wrote, he talked about justice and how justice can be seen in the society. Then he gave the theory of entitlement. Now, this entitlement theory is mainly related to ownership of property. It mainly talks about how the people, the individual should have the right to own property, under what rules they should transfer property, so on and so forth. So let's try and see in detail what exactly is this entitlement theory of justice, and then we'll see if we can write an answer to that. Now, as I said, Robert Nozick is the person behind this. He wrote this book. The name of the book was Anarchy, State and Utopia. In that book, he talked about entitlement theory, which is a theory of distributive justice. Now, what is distributive justice? See, justice is of different types. Usually, to a common man, when you say justice will be served to you, a common man will think justice means if someone has broken the law, you punish that person. That is justice, which is not wrong. That is also justice. But over here, we are talking about distributive justice. Distributive justice is different. Distributive justice means in a society, how will you distribute the resources in the society so that justice prevails? For example, if the government tomorrow says that all the property of the country will be owned by one person only one private individual, that will be injustice. So distributive justice would mean that the government would make rules so that the property of the country, resources of the country are properly divided, not in a manner that it just favors some specific individuals. That is the idea of distributive justice. That is, how do you distribute resources in the society, those resources specifically which are limited in numbers, limited in quantity. So entitlement theory basically talks about distributive justice. He mainly, as I said, talked about how the property will be owned by people. Because see, for liberal thinkers such as John Locke, Robert Nozick, Hayek, etc., for them, right to property has always been one of the most important rights. John Locke, for example, talked a lot about how the state should not interfere in people owning property, because in earlier times in ancient history, a big debate was, should an individual have the right to own property or not? Does the entire property belong to the state, or should individuals also be given the right to own certain parts of the property? Liberal thinkers obviously were of the view that common people should also get the right to own property. John Locke, Robert Nozick, all these people were of this view that yes, common people, individuals should also own property. Now, when you have to understand entitlement theory of Robert Nozick, just understand three principles. I told you earlier also, in optional and in most of the GS questions, the examiner expects you to write important keywords in the answer. If the question, for example, is about entitlement theory and you don't write these three principles, your answer will be incomplete, doesn't matter what you have written. This is where you have to remember what are the keywords associated with the topic that is being asked, and you have to mention that. So entitlement theory mainly follows three principles. First principle, it would be justice if people own the property that they are entitled to legally. So if you acquire property in a legal manner and no one is taking it away from you illegally, forcefully, that will be the first principle. Second principle of entitlement theory, that there should be proper transfer of property allowed. For example, if someone owns the property, they should be allowed to decide that if they pass away, this property should be transferred to whom. So inheritance transfer, this should be allowed as per the law. Third principle, in case first or the second principle are not followed, means in case someone illegally or by force acquires a property or someone by force transfers the property, then the victim should be compensated. The government should ensure that this injustice does not prevail. These are the three big principles of this theory of entitlement. Number one, acquisition of property can be done as per the law. Number two, transfer of property can also be done as per the law. Number three, if first or the second thing is not followed, if it is done by force, if it is done against the law, then the state has to step in to stop this injustice from happening. These are the three principles. So in simple terms, in short, you can define them as justice in acquisition, justice in transfer, and rectification in holdings, just in case first or the second are not followed. These are the three big principles of the entitlement theory. Means he also is one of those that supports the private ownership of property. He supports the fact that individuals have the right to own property and no one can be allowed to take it away from them. I'll give you one more example here. In a lot of developing countries, in India as well, land acquisition is a very big issue. You will see a lot of big infrastructure projects of the government get delayed time and time again. Why is it that in India, projects such as bullet train will take years and years of years, and then you will see in China similar projects will be completed within months? Because in India, land acquisition, government acquiring land from the people is a very, very long process. It happens in those countries where individuals do have their right to property. In countries such as China, where government can just snatch away property without even giving you any rights, they obviously don't take any time. So again, it depends on which kind of a country you are living in, but modern societies, liberal societies specifically, make sure that the right to property is protected. Robert Nozick's theory can be defined, and again these three principles, if you want to expand them, can be expanded like this. First, the person who acquires property as per the law is entitled to hold that. Second, they can transfer that. And third, as I said, no one can take it away from them. This is their entire logic. Just transfer. If it does not happen, the state should come into the picture. Liberal thinkers anyways have always defined state as a night watchman. They have always said that the state should not interfere except when someone breaks the contract. So breaking the contract comes into this category. If someone breaking the contract, someone is illegally transferring or forcefully acquiring your land, that becomes a case of the state coming into the picture. So entitlement theory in simple terms you can define as distribution is just if everyone is entitled to the holdings that they possess under their distribution. Means Some people who steal from others, defraud others, enslave others, they should be prevented from this. If someone is following these principles or someone is defrauding them, the third principle should come into the picture of rectification, and the government, the state, should take center stage in that scenario. Now, Robert Nozick was obviously inspired by a lot of liberal thinkers before him, none more than John Locke. As we had discussed, John Locke, the father of liberalism, he was one of the first people to talk about the right of property. Now, when earlier thinkers, liberal thinkers, when they came up with their theories, one of the most interesting questions that they had to answer was, how did first ownership of property begin? Means, go back in history. How do you think for the first time someone would have come to own the property? There has to be some beginning, right? In the beginning, what would have happened? So John Locke, for example, said that ownership of property should be given to people if they are utilizing the land. If you're utilizing a certain piece of land, you are mixing your labor with the land. When I say utilizing, that means you're doing agriculture, etc. So the piece of land where you are mixing your agriculture, where you are putting in your effort, that becomes your land. This is a theory that many liberal thinkers followed after that. Robert Nozick also got inspired by John Locke. Both of these are supporters of people's right to have private property and free market economy. In fact, Robert Nozick also endorsed a certain minimum social program for the poor. He did not say that the poor who cannot afford property should not be given anything. He did endorse a kind of a welfare program where the state should ensure at least some basic level of amenities for everyone living in the society. There were other thinkers in the liberal realm that inspired Robert Nozick, Immanuel Kant, where he talked about how individuals are end and not just the means. They may not be sacrificed for achieving some other means. Friedrich Hayek, all these people have been well-known liberals of the past. Now, the interesting part is that his theory has been criticized as well. His theory does not go well with some other theories. For example, later on we will study about John Rawls. John Rawls famously gave his own theory of justice. John Rawls' theory is very different, where he talks about distribution of resources in the society, distribution of opportunities in the society in an equal manner. John Rawls was of the view that everyone should be given equal opportunities in the society, equal rights, equal liberty, and if there is inequality, it should be in such a manner that those who are at a disadvantage earlier, they should be favored. So for example, ideally everyone should be given equal amount of money. But if the government has to give unequal amount of money, then more money should be given to those who have lesser money. That is the theory of John Rawls. So on one hand, we have Robert Nozick, where he says that they should not be handed over by the government. People who own the property can transfer the property to the next generation or whatever. On the other hand, John Rawls is saying that it should be divided in such a manner that everyone gets equally whatever resources of the state are or whatever opportunities that the state has to present. So these are two contrasting views. Nozick on one hand is a pure liberal thinkers, to each according to his or her capacity. On the other hand, or capability, on the other hand, people such as John Rawls have always been of the view that the government should ensure equality in opportunity as much as possible in the society. If there is inequality, it should favor those who are at a disadvantage already. What about the criticism of his theory? Interestingly, Robert Nozick himself criticized his theory later on in his life. So it was very early on in 1970s when he wrote this book. He gave this entitlement theory. Later on, he himself said that there are some faults in the entitlement theory that he gave. He said that according to my theory, I know that most of the property will be concentrated in the hands of a few people who are extremely skilled or who have gotten this in the form of inheritance from their higher generations. So he does understand this, that his theory is not foolproof. it would lead to concentration of property in the hands of a few people. Maybe because they're very skillful, fine, but it will lead to this concentration of property. So what does he suggest? He suggests something like an inheritance tax. Yes, the same inheritance tax that is very famous in our politics now these days. So he suggested that maybe we can restructure institutions in such a way that there may be some taxes subtracted, so that not all the money, not the entire property is transferred to the next generation. This is what he also suggested, because he understood that there are some issues in the theory that he suggested. This was the entire idea of the entitlement theory given by Robert Nozick. It's the entitlement theory of justice. Now, we'll have to just compress what we read, summarize that to write this answer in 200 words. Again, the question was, examine the entitlement theory of justice. Let's see how do we write this. So, in the very beginning, we have to first tell the examiner that we know who gave this theory. That is the first indication that you have to do. When the question does not mention the name of the thinker, they just mention the name of the theory or just a quote. In the very first line, you have to first tell the examiner that I know who gave this theory or quote, and then start your answer. So we'll first start by introducing Robert Nozick, that we know he is a person behind this theory. And then, as I said, 3 principles have to be written here. Nozick identifies 3 principles on which entitlement will conform to justice, and these are the 3 principles: acquisition of property, transfer of property, and then rectification in case this has not happened. Then you talk about how Robert Nozick has always preferred a liberal state where government does not interfere. He also understands that it might lead to unjust acquisitions, it might lead to concentration of property in the hands of a few people. He absolved the rich of all the social responsibility and did not speak of social indebtedness. He did not say that the rich people should distribute their property to everyone else. He just focused, or he favored, transfer of property from one generation to the other generation. In fact, progressive taxation also was something that he did not favor. Now, progressive taxation basically means taxing someone on or in proportion to how much you earn. The more you earn, the more taxes you pay. That is usually what income tax is. Liberal thinkers mostly don't support progressive taxation because it is seen as a form of punishing people for earning more money. People who worked hard, got more money, they are being taken, or more taxes are being taken from them. Anyway, so again, these are the things that you can mention in this particular answer to conclude this. I hope you learned a new topic today. Do join the Telegram channel. The link is in the description of the video where I'll upload these PDFs. A lot more videos coming in. I might launch a PSIR course also soon, so please stay tuned for that as well. This class is on 4 p.m. Monday, Wednesday and Fridays. Do join in for the next class on Monday. Thank you so much. And also, if you missed out any of the earlier classes, I'm giving the link of the entire playlist in the description of the video. Do see that as well. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.